Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are live.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of December 15th, 2021, the last one of the year. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge we're on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples. Looks like we have a fairly light agenda today. So I'll turn to Ms. Harrison for the first item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item is approval of the agenda, but there are some amendments. The first one is item R1 to be pulled so that it can be referred to the APC. The second item is a new business item under closed session. And it's closed session section 91K negotiations.
Okay, thank you. So item R2 stays on the agenda? Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, item R2, we can move that to reorder the agenda to appear later, but you can do that as we go through.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So any other changes to the agenda? Could I have a motion to approve? Seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And the next item, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is adoption of the minutes, and the recommendation before you is that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of December 1st, 2021 be adopted.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? No, been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So next item, Ms. Harrison.
The next item is business arising. There is none. Then public input period. We have no applicants. All the way down to reports. Item R1 was pulled at adoption of the agenda. And if you'd like to reorder the agenda so that item R2 appears after or later in the agenda, after new business.
Okay. Yes, we can do that.
Okay. Item R4 is the report from the Community Planning Division regarding changes to the Agricultural Land Commission Act. And there is a recommendation before you. The recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that policy changes related to residential dwellings and agriculture land be considered during the development of modernized official community plan, MOCP, and modernized zoning bylaw, MZB, to provide consistency between Agricultural Land Commission regulations and CVRD land use regulations where appropriate.
Okay, thank you. So do we have a staff person that's to speak to this one? Emily?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. There is no presentation that's been prepared for this report. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I am here to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, I have Director Smith and then Director Acton and Nicholson and Wilson. Okay.
I think Director Yanni DiNardo had her hand up before me, so I'll go second. Thank you.
Okay, Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you. I was actually going to move the recommendation.
Okay, and Director Acton seconding? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, so we'll go to Director Smith.
Thank you very much. One of the things that I have a little bit of concern regarding this decision made by the ALC is there are some agricultural lands that are smaller, under 10 acres. And when you put a second dwelling on, you delete the amount of farmable land. You also create much higher impervious areas with additional driveways, possibly septic systems and buildings and outbuildings. I'm wondering if we should consider in our MOCP or at some point just looking at a smaller footprint for under 10 acres. To me, that seems a good direction to be taking. Under 10 acres, there's the opportunity to have a secondary suite that is attached to the principal dwelling that could be used by family members or by workers. And I think that we need to take careful consideration as we move forward and deleting our farmland for impervious areas. So I'm not sure how we would move into bringing that forward, and maybe Miss Breen has an idea or in regards to that.
Any comment from
Or
staff on?
maybe Emily. I apologize, Miss Breen. I see Emily there now. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the director, yeah, those are certainly conversations that should be had. And like it mentions in the staff report, that it is the responsibility of the local government to further regulate land uses like residential units and allowing them within the zones. So we can go over and beyond what the ALC allows in the ALCA. So that is up to the committee how far they want to go with implementing the recommendations, or the regulations from the Agricultural Land Commission. But we can certainly have those conversations during the MOCP about where we want to increase residential densities within agricultural land.
Okay, Director Smith. So next, Director Acton, did you have a comment or just seconding? Okay, so we'll go to Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I guess the issue I would like to raise is, well, first of all, maybe we don't have discretion over this. So whether or not we include it in our OCP and zoning bylaw, unless we want to take things a little bit farther, it happens anyway. Do I have that correct?
Dixon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the director. So the way that it works with the Agricultural Land Commission Act is that the local government would have to also allow for the residential dwelling to be permitted through the zone. So if there is a zone that doesn't allow for a secondary detached dwelling, but the ALC does, then the applicant would have to apply to rezone that property to allow for the additional density.
Director Nicholson.
My query is around the zoning bylaw. So we have now a harmonized official community plan, and it strikes me that the ALR area, the farming area, is one area where we could get to work on revising the zoning bylaw to accommodate or to harmonize the zoning bylaw so that all the agricultural land makes sense. And I don't really think we should be sort of kicking this down the road to modernization, because I think it's something that we should be doing as we go. And this, to me, seems like a relatively straightforward area that we could do some policy work and get the zoning bylaw harmonized. Is that out of line? Is the question to staff.
Okay, Ms. Dixon.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't think it's out of line. In my professional opinion, I do think that the conversation maybe is a broader one, that we consider the policies, specifically agricultural policies, on a broader scale, because of course when you increase density, there's question about servicing. So we want to be careful where we add that increased density to our region. But this is something that has been on the docket for the ministry as well as the Agricultural Land Commission for a number of years now. with the changes to the ALC Act. If it's the wish of the committee, it's something that we could certainly look at, and that is what option 2 provides for you. But that would be at the discretion of the committee.
Okay, thank you. So we'll think on that for, shall we, Director Nicholson, and we'll move to Directors Wilson, Morrison, and Martman next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I see this as a very positive step. And Director Smith actually does bring up a very good point about the 10 acres. It's not a big parcel by any means, and we would have to be very careful on what is allowed on that. So it's something we're thinking about. But I see that as I see this as a very positive step, as we've had instances where an application has come forward to this committee for to build on land as never and will never be productive, and we've turned it down because it was ALR, even though it's not doing anything. It's just lying, doing nothing. So this applies especially and particularly to the need for the younger generation of farmers to be able to continue food production on the family lands, while at the same time allowing their aging parents to remain in place. So this is a very, very positive step in allowing this to go forward, because we now will have control over continuation, succession planning, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm very much in favor of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my perspective is this looks like something that the ALC has wanted to sort of button up into a neat package, because some of these things have either been going on or been sought after, and you know, it seems to me it's sort of been one-off attempts at these. I get the concept, what Director Wilson said, it all makes sense. I guess one of my concerns is, well, even I'll step back from that, is, you know, years ago, the ALC had a policy that, you know, a farm is a farm is a farm, and it's going to stay a farm. And now we're opening up to additional space, residential space for farm workers, and then maybe just a revenue property, or, you know, Airbnb and the likes. And I'm not saying that any of this is wrong, because farmers as a landowning group have almost been penalized and kept poor by holding lands in this class. So I get that. But what I'm concerned about is the folks that will go and look for those properties that are ripe for speculation. They don't really have an intention to farm. Like, I know of some smaller lot ALR lands that people have gone in, and the first thing they did is they put a driveway at one end of the property and a driveway at the other end of the property, and built one house at one end and one house in the other, and everybody knew exactly what they were planning to do. They were going to do a family subdivision and hold it for 5 years and sell it. So are we looking at any protections to keep farmland, or are we creating a new class of economic development on ALC lands? That's for Ms. Dixon. Oh, and one last thing. Will we be going to consult farmers at the the Ag Fair in February? It'd be a great place to connect with folks that might have an interest in this.
And Ms. Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you and possibly somebody else from our division can jump in if they'd like, but there has been consultation that was done already through these changes that came to the ALCA with the farming community, and but it's certainly something that we could do if we were to look at changing our agricultural policies. For the first part of your question, I think that there is a lot that we can do within the OCP to support farming and farming practices. I think the last little while it's been quite obvious through the region that farming is difficult to do, and there needs to be more support for it, especially going forward in the future with climate change and what have you. So I think we are really lucky in British Columbia to have the Agricultural Land Commission. And as much as their regulations do change, I think a lot of that change is coming from the ministry and rather not the Agricultural Land Commission themselves. But I do think that they have a mandate to protect agriculture, and we should be aligning our policies as much as we can to do the same to support that industry.
Thank you. Follow up?
But my question, though, is do you see anything in these new regulations that will keep long-range land speculators out of speculating on ALR lands and developing for essentially economic development purposes and not farming purposes?
Dixon?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that's an interesting one. I think there are certain things that we can do. The policies as they stand right now in the HOCP, a number of them that I highlighted in the report do talk about forwarding applications where there's clear evidence to staff that the property has been established as a farm, so having BC assessment farm status. So that's one sort of check and balance that we do have, but sometimes it's not that clear or obvious what that transaction is going to look like later down the road. I'm not sure that I have a great answer for you to that question, but possibly if Mike or Anne or Corley wish to chime in, please feel free.
Okay. Ms. Churl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say if regardless of whether the decision is to move forward now or later, there is an opportunity in the zoning regulations to build in some provisions that might protect against some of the things that you're concerned with. So for instance, there's an opportunity to require properties to be covenanted so that they cannot be further subdivided. There is an opportunity to covenant properties to require that they only be used for longer-term residential purposes and not for commercial accommodation. And there are similarly could be other restrictions that might be opposed via covenant over that type of a use in the ALR. I guess the fundamental question, though, is whether or not the committee would have general agreement over the direction to allow detached secondary dwellings within the ALR, or if there isn't a clear consensus, then it's clear that a bigger policy discussion is needed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tippett, you popped up. Did you want to add anything, or? There he is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have a lot to add to that. I'll just note one little anecdote here. During one of the sessions that the Ministry of Agriculture and Agricultural Land Commission had to brief local government staff on this initiative, it was fairly clear from Martin Collins, who was a retiring sort of administrative type person at the ALC, that he wasn't necessarily totally aligned with the thrust of these amendments, and so it remains a bit of a controversial thing. And I'm sensing that from the committee here. There's some opinions that probably need to be discussed in a broader context. But yeah, I'll agree with what the general manager is saying about having some latitude in the zoning to deal with some of these issues and try and provide additional protections that may not be inbuilt to the act itself and its amendments.
Okay, thank you. So so I have Directors Markman, Yanni DiNardo, and then second round Nicholson and Wilson. Director Markman, please.
Thank you, Chair. And through the staff, I noticed he provided a PowerPoint presentation with this item on the agenda.
Sorry, Director Markman.
Ben needs to turn his
PowerPoint is
video
that?
off.
And
Yeah, maybe if you turn your video off, Director Markman.
okay. Can you hear me now?
That's better, thank you.
Okay, I'll be going blind here, just so you know. There's a PowerPoint with this presentation or with this item, and I was interested about whose PowerPoint that is, and would that be presented to us at some point?
Okay, Ms. Dixon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the director. Yeah, this presentation was the presentation that Mr. Tippett was just speaking about. It was a presentation that was given to staff or a number of local governments, actually, all at one time by the Agricultural Land Commission. If it's the wish of the committee, we can certainly set something up to go over in more depth the changes that are proposed here.
So just follow up to that. I would like that. I think understanding some of the background would be helpful. I live on a farm, and my neighbors in this area there's a lot of farming. But the different perspectives I hear from other directors, I think would be very useful for them as well to hear why these changes and what's going forward. As Director Wilson says, there's a lot about this language about enabling farming, and yet I hear directors, putting their experience and lens on this, saying that, it could be used by developers, it could be used in other ways, it might actually hinder farming, and I think it'd be good for us to be all on the same page, and I think a presentation would help that.
Okay, well, is that, you're requesting that now? I don't know, Ms. Dixon, if, is it a long PowerPoint, or how do you feel about?
This presentation that was given to local governments was 17 pages is what's attached to the documents, but we can certainly reach out to the ALC and see if their folks wouldn't mind giving us a presentation. That's something that I'd be happy to set up. They're, I think, happy to talk to local governments about these changes.
Okay. That work for you, Director Martman?
Yes, I was nodding.
Okay, good. Well, come on back then. Okay, thank you. As I move to Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. A comment, first of all, I think now more than ever, the protection of the ALR is super important. The amount of people that are moving here and purchasing land and people that want to live here, it's going to be very important. And there are parts, speaking to Director Wilson's matter on land that is not arable for gardening, but as farmers, there's sheep, goats, and there's land that can still be used. It doesn't necessarily have to be just the soils for protection. And then also I am asking the staff, the MOCP and the MZB, how long will that take roughly? Because I've moved option 1, but I just wondered how long, or do we have an estimate on how long it'll take for these regulations to be put through?
Mr. Tippett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the directors. Yeah, the zoning bylaw, MZB, will be done by this division, so I can speak to that. We're actually trying to regroup after Holly left. We had an initial work program set out for that, but it was an early draft, and so I'm working with Michelle and Emily on that right now. So we hope to bring something back to the committee with a timeline associated with it. And I think in response to what I heard from Director Nicholson, there definitely might be some opportunities to move early to try and address some of these things. I can't predict an exact timeline, but I think the benefits that derive from harmonizing policy really hit the ground when you harmonize regulations. So we realize it's a priority, and we're going to do our best to come up with a realistic and timely plan, and we'll be bringing that to committee sometime early in the 2022. Okay,
thank you, because that is my concern, because if it goes on to, I just wonder if there are opportunities of farmers and that come up in between times that could be moved forward, and we wouldn't have any jurisdiction over that. So I appreciate if it was done quickly. That'd be really good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So moving to round two, we have Nicholson, Wilson, and Martman. Nicholson?
Thank you. This is clearly a pretty important area for many of us, and there's lots of ALR in the electoral areas. And so I am not really comfortable with option one. I don't feel like we should be. I think we should actually make this a priority. And it seems if I think Director Morrison's thought about the ag show and I think there are lots of opportunities over this next winter to do, which I don't think it doesn't sound to me like it's a lot of policy work, but a bit of policy work and then move into getting the zoning harmonized for the agricultural stuff would be a good plan. Because there are concerns, and if there's ways that we can mitigate things before we go any farther, that would be a good thing to do, I think. So I won't be voting for option one.
Okay. We'll go through the speakers and then we'll deal with that. So Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. There's some really good points coming up here, and I'm one of the things that Director Morrison brought up was the consultation with the farming community, and not to put anyone on the spot, Director Martman, but I'm just wondering, as the only true farmer here within this group, whether you've had any consultations with your neighbours to see if they've had anything on this, and I know he's already spoken on this, but it would be interesting, and I know that Director Martman is on the list to speak again, if he could address that maybe. And to Director Liani Donato's point about sheep and goats, etc., I take that point. Of course, it is usable for those kind of animals, but I'm just wondering whether this could or would be seen as a restriction to allowing the family succession and elder care to be able to build on that land, even though you could use these animals. It's an extra cost, it's an extra shoulder burden to put on them. Yes, it could be used for sheep and I would much rather see it be allowed to be used for that family succession and the care of their aging parents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Was there a question in there, Director Wilson, or that lost your thread?
Director Martman, can you speak on that bit?
Okay,
There's the question. Is that all right?
Okay, we'll go to Director Martman, and I see Director Smith as well. Director Martman?
I'll turn my video off here. So to answer the question, yes, the neighboring farms do talk about this, and I think there's twofold. One is that it's a little bit of a beginning, but it's not there by any stretch. And I think one of the things is that you get this disparity between size of farms across the province, and this is a across the province kind of change to legislation. And what is specific to that is what is 40 hectares. On the island, that's a pretty big farm. In the Caribou, that's tiny. And if you go to Manitoba, quite frankly, that's their front lawn. So, it's, I think every farmer that I know is trying to find a way to augment income that is allowed by the ALR. Or Agricultural Land Commission, rather. And this is one of those things that they say, yes, you can actually earn income through this. And, sometimes you say, well, it's not direct income. It may be something where, yes, you've got relatives living there and they don't have to pay rent, or you don't have to help them pay rent somewhere else. So, there's indirect ways as well. So, but I think farmers here are saying, 900 square feet approximately for an additional dwelling doesn't give them a lot of options, especially if they're trying to have a second family live there with them. So I think they're feeling that this might be the beginning of the wedge in the door, but yeah, sorry if that's a long-winded answer. But
Oh, great, thank you. So Director Smith.
Thank you. I think farming, I grew up involved in farming, and I know how I like the thing about the 40 hectares, depending on where you live, is definitely different. And here in the Cowichan Valley, many of the farms are much smaller, and over time they've been subdivided into smaller parcels, smaller parcels, smaller parcels. And we know that food sustainability is one of our priorities as we move forward in the coming years. And there's so many new technologies. I think I sent most of you some information on some new technologies that are out there for farming. We're not just looking at cattle farming, we are looking at buildings that have the opportunity to have in-house gardens, produce, and things like that. So technology is changing farming, whether it's for agricultural animals or whether it's for produce of food that's vegetable and those categories. One of the things I think is that we're looking at creating impervious areas by adding an accessory dwelling onto that parcel. And I'm going to go back to the secondary suite because I have seen recently a lot of very interesting secondary suites that are being added to houses, that they're creating a breezeway that then sort of separates it actually from the main house. And this is a great opportunity. If you have aging family, it means that they're close by, but they have their own accommodation, they have their own area. And maybe the size is small, but I think it's very important that we create less of a footprint as we move forward on the smaller lots especially. And I really think that we should start exploring some of those secondary suite options for the smaller size parcels. I think it's great if you have a larger parcel and you have the ability to have an additional home that doesn't impact the use of the land, and that you can have additional workers on your parcel. So I think we need to have a good look at some of those secondary suite options that are out there for the smaller lots. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did I miss anyone? No, okay. Oh, go ahead, Director Martman.
Sorry, last time I was just sorry. Okay.
Oh.
Last time I was just answering Director Wilson. I speak to option 2 as well, and maybe a question to staff. Are they starting to get any inquiries from the public, from farmers on this about what they might be wanting to do in the new year?
Okay, Ms. Dixon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the director, I do believe that the planning staff has received a couple in the last week or so. I'm not sure how much advertising the ALC and the ministry have done on this information, but they did do a media release weeks ago on the topic. Date here. From July. So that was a little bit ago. But I'm sure as the regulations do change that we will start to get more inquiries.
And so I guess that's where I would speak to option 2, in that I think the planners would have the information that they need from this committee or direction, that would be useful. And that's my assumption. Is that a correct assumption, Ms. Dixon?
Ms. Dixon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, the more direction that we have and the policy to back that up helps staff direct the public. Sorry, I don't know if I answered your question totally, but.
No, I think you did. I think really it is about option 2 and moving forward and not letting this wait too long. Sorry, Ms. Chair Officer.
Yeah, Ms. Chair, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Ms. Ms. Breen is on the call and could perhaps speak to this better than I can, but we do anticipate going out to the community in the spring for consultation on the MOCP. I believe that one of the focus areas is housing. Certainly there are issues with housing on ALR land, but there are also issues with housing on non-ALR lands. And so I know that that needs to be a specific focus for us in our community consultation starting this spring. So having said that, if we were to wait, if the committee were to decide to wait on consultation, I would anticipate that this would come up as part of the conversation starting this spring. If there was an interest in doing some more immediate consultation, staff would have to go back and determine what budget we have available to do additional public consultation on this particular topic. And we could come forward with an additional supplemental request if necessary. And that would obviously have to come to you at a meeting in the near future. And that would be for targeted consultation on this particular file with the public. Otherwise, we would be looking at doing, regulatory changes with in-house staff and I would say limited consultation with the public.
Okay, thank you. So, well, before I turn to Ms. Breen, she said just so everyone, so we've got option one's been moved and seconded. We've also got option 2 there. So maybe Ms. Breen, in your comments, if you could tell us the difference between those two, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, I'm with Corley Breen here, and we have a technical problem, and so her headphones don't function, so she actually hasn't been able to hear any of the discussion to date, and so she can't respond to questions because she can't hear them, so or say anything. So, and this will come up again in our item. We have a shared item coming up, and it'll again be an issue there too. So, that's what we got. One of those technical glitches.
Okay, no worries. We'll rely on Ms. Charles. But I do see Director Nicholson and Director Smith both had extra comments. So Director Nicholson.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, if like, I know we were going to do this housing thing, and it seems to me that we really need to talk to the agricultural community about this. So it surprises me that Ms. Breen wouldn't have sort of planned to do that. And I'm wondering, I guess my question really is, I don't understand why we couldn't push it up a little bit without having to spend a lot of extra money to get something done that I think we would have wanted to do well anyway. Anyway, question for Ms. Cheroff, I guess.
Cheroff?
I'm sorry, I can't speak for Ms. Breen, but I will say that there is, I believe, an upcoming special EASC meeting dealing with the MOCP, and there's perhaps an opportunity to discuss the issue at that upcoming meeting. But if you were looking for staff to do some consultation at the Island Agriculture Show, we would simply request that you make a resolution for us to do that, and we'll figure out how to do it within the budget that we have for that specific date. I think that's certainly manageable. If we're looking at more fulsome long-term consultation with the farming community, that's going to be a project unto itself that we need to look at potentially through additional supplemental funds.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Director Nicholson.
Well, that sounds like a good idea. I just am a little bit concerned if I vote if we land on option 1, would it be better to refer this to the MOC zoning bylaw discussion? Because probably there needs to be a setting of priorities on the policy work that is done within that context. And it seems to me that we all think that many of us think that this is an important area. And I just don't want to see it drag on at this point. So I'm not keen on option 1 at all.
So are you referring this to the upcoming special EASC?
Well, I'm wondering if that is appropriate, Ms. Cheroff.
I'm going to have to defer to either our Deputy Corporate Officer, to Ms. Breen, on the date of the upcoming special EASC.
We have Ms. Breen.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Go
Okay,
ahead,
thank
please.
you. There's 3 forthcoming special EASC meetings. The first one's January 20th. And then there is one in February and 2 in February and 1 in March as a backup.
Director Nicholson.
So, Ms. Breen, I think the issue is we would like, there is interest around the table in getting going on the policy work and the zoning harmonization on the agricultural stuff sooner rather than later. And so I think the discussion really is about how best we can do that. And we are faced with option 1 or option 2, and the potential to perhaps do some consultation with the agricultural community at the Ag Show in February. So wondering how best to move forward with an option that would accommodate this need to act sooner rather than later. Do you have any ideas for that?
Ms. Breen.
Through the chair. Certainly that is one opportunity. This is a very complex policy area, and in my opinion, it should be considered more broadly with all of the other factors. So certainly that's one area. It's possible that the community circles will certainly be addressing this policy area, but that's not until April and May. And so it's simply about resource and capacity if we want something. But I would suggest a fulsome look at all of the issues so that it's understood what the impact of this particular policy change would be on other things as well.
Okay. So go ahead, Director Nicholson.
I just have to preface that, sorry, but I didn't hear any of the conversation, so I'm just speaking off the top of my head.
Understand.
Thank you, Ms. Breen. I appreciate that. I guess what I am interested in understanding is whether there's an opportunity to make sure that this agricultural policy work that needs to happens as a #1 priority, like faster than waiting until all the other policy work is done. Is that possible?
Ms. Breen.
Through the chair, well, we certainly can do some amendments to 4270 on the policy side. The zoning bylaws would require additional work. We could probably do very high level amendments to 4270, maybe by the second special EASC meeting, which is when we're going to be addressing land use designations. On the zoning bylaw changes, it would be about capacity in community planning, and I'm not sure what the resource capacity is, and perhaps Mr. Tippett could speak to that if he's still online.
Okay, Mr. Tippett.
Yeah, it's we're still actually sorting out some of the division of labor between the divisions. So I think that's an ongoing discussion that we're going to have more clarity on before we can be totally clear. We are a small division. We have 3 people, and our primary task at the moment is 3 major projects, one of which is the modernized zoning bylaw. So, we do have some capacity, and it's a question of prioritization. And also, as I say, in a matter like this, where there's policy work combined with regulatory work, 2 different divisions being involved. So it requires some coordination and clarity on, who's going to be part of the work program. So we're going to be working on that, or I guess it's being worked on right now. So hopefully we'll have a clearer answer in January than we do at this exact moment. But again, if it's the highest priority as decided by this committee, then we can certainly move on it fairly quickly. We do have 3 people in the division.
Okay, thank you. And I'm hoping Ms. Jarrell will have a solution.
Well, I'm not sure if it's a solution, Mr. Chair, but one idea that occurred to me was that we could report back to the committee in January at your January 19th meeting with possible recommendations around resourcing and capacity with respect to housing issues, and that could be specific to this particular topic area and the agricultural land reserve, or it could be more broadly around housing. I know that there's the housing issues, definitely surpasses the ALR. It's sort of pervasive throughout our region, and so we may want to think about how we best deal with the issue of affordable housing and housing options as a project unto itself. And we would bring you potentially some budget considerations or ideas to explore at that January 19th meeting.
Okay, thank you. So that is one option, then refer to the January 19th EASC, but I do have three other hands. I think Director Smith, Kuhn, and Wilson, if I'm not mistaken, will go to.
Thank you. Based on all the discussion, hearing things about, a more fulsome, looking at the whole community, I think that definitely what I was hearing from Ms. Breen is that, bringing it forward at the upcoming the MOCP discussions for special EASC, I would support that at this time. I think that there's more discussion required. I think that option 1 and option 2 are just not what we're looking for at this time, and that we should move forward with it to move into an upcoming special EASC meeting. I would support that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Kuhn.
Yes, I just want to make a comment. We know that we have staff shortages, and I don't think it is right to just push one issue and say this is a real priority. I'm sure staff have a whole bunch of priorities sitting on their desks, and I would defer back to staff and I'd have them sort it out. Okay, what is the real priority, and where do we move forward with that without us pushing for one particular issue? I don't think that's very productive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Wilson, did you have something to add?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a subject that has more ramifications than just housing. As I've mentioned before, there's the other bits and pieces that come into it. And please do not, and Ms. Yeroff, please don't take this the wrong way. Please, let's not include this with the affordable housing subject and the conversation there. There are myriad people dealing with that particular subject. This shouldn't be part of it. It should be a completely separate thing. This is to protect our farmers and our food production. So I would be happy to see this go back to be discussed further and leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair. And, I think the whole idea, and Director Kuhn's right, it's trying to, what are you prioritizing? This is important. It's important to my community, important to me. But I am understanding that we have to work within the constraints of the staffing. So, I'm quite comfortable referring that back and letting them, proceed. And they've heard what our concerns are and how important it is to us.
Okay, thank you. So I think we've had a good long discussion. So again, we have the option 1 is on the table, on the floor. I believe procedurally, Ms. Harrison, would we defeat that if we wanted to go to a referral motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to committee. The option 1 has been moved and seconded. If the committee wishes to move and second a referral motion, that would be entertained, but if we could get some specific language surrounding the referral, i.e. is it going back to staff for a report, or is it going to the January 19th EASC, or the January 20th special EASC?
Okay, Director Morrison.
Well, I was gonna move that this matter be referred back to staff and that they report back on the 19th in regards to what they've heard today and potential resourcing and for this item moving forward. That simple. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Good, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I think we did still have outstanding the agriculture show. Do we need a separate resolution on that? Ms. Charles, you mentioned we want a separate resolution if we want to present at that show.
Mr. Chair, that would be the will of, if it's the will of the committee to make that recommendation, that would be up to you.
Okay, move to Director Martman. Any seconder? Mr. Wilson? Any discussion? Okay, Director Acton.
I guess I feel like we're moving into the marketing department now, and you know, we've given staff some direction, and they've heard our concerns and everything. I think they can decide. It was a great idea. I think it's a great idea to be out in front of the community in that way. But I don't think that we need to create a resolution around it. We don't know when the timeline is for this, like if it would cause a delay or put other things in front of other things. I just think it's very, I don't think it's necessary. Let's just say that.
Okay, well, Ms. Charles did mention it, but Director Yanni DiNardo.
I agree with Director Acton because there's staffing issues. We're already struggling, budget issues and all of that. We just leave it with staff.
Okay, Director Morrison.
Yeah, we've just given direction to staff to come back with some of their ideas around resourcing, and whether this fits into that or not, we'll know on the 19th, and we can move forward from there. So I don't think we need to make a resolution on attending that. We don't know if we've even got the bodies to sit in and to do the work. Thank you.
All right, but I believe we did move and second the resolution, did we, Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, you did, but if it's the committee's consensus to withdraw, that would be acceptable.
Okay, I see nodding. Is that all right, Director Martman? Okay, we can withdraw that then. Good, thank you, everyone. Shall we move to the next one, or should we take, maybe it's almost an hour, should we take a short break? I think it's probably the right time. We'll come back in 10 minutes. Okay, thanks, everyone. See you in 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are live.
Okay, welcome back. I think we have 2 more items in open session. So the first item, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is R4, which is a report from the Community Planning Division regarding the Municipality of North Cowichan official community plan referral. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that the Municipality of North Cowichan be advised that the Cowichan Valley Regional District has no objection to their draft official community plan.
Thank you. And Mr. Tibbet. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and hello again to the committee members. This report was originally scheduled to be on the previous meeting, and you may recall that it was pulled off the agenda in furtherance to some questions from one of the directors regarding specific details that were relevant to the CVRD or CVRD hospital district. And so we took another look at it, a closer look at it, and we also put a hyperlink, which unfortunately isn't clickable if you're using the paper version, but to a summary document, which is a lot shorter than the OCP itself at the North Cowichan website. Essentially, the purpose of our review of this document in the first place, and with this latest revision, was to find out what content in this Municipality of North Cowichan official plan might be of particular interest to matters of either shared jurisdiction or particular interest to the Cowichan Valley Regional District and Hospital District. And so there are a number of bullets that are in the body of the report that focus on a number of issues that we felt were relevant and might be of interest. In doing this review, staff didn't identify anything that appeared to be problematic. And so it didn't, in effect, change the recommendation. So I'll just let the report speak for itself. I'm not going to go through a presentation on it, but if there are any questions, I'll make my best effort to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Director Nicholson, do you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead then.
So when you're ready for comments, call on me.
Oh, we can come to you after Director Acton.
Thanks. By them doing their official community plan right now, it makes me wonder about the electoral areas that touch the borders of North Cowichan, and this kind of what I've heard is that municipalities can extend their boundaries quite easily, and like if there's some I want to say vulnerable areas that may not want that to happen. Is this something that we would have to be concerned about?
Tibbet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for Director Acton for the question. It is a tough question. I'll try to answer it though. You're correct, Director Acton. The Local Government Act and basically the long history of municipal incorporation in BC does essentially consider unincorporated areas to be potential annexation areas for existing municipalities that are nearby, obviously adjacent normally, and also for spontaneous incorporation for areas that historically didn't have municipal councils. The way the legislation is structured, and without getting into a lot of detail, it wouldn't be possible for an official community plan, I don't think, to tie the hands of the minister, because ultimately the municipal boundary questions, just like boundary questions for improvement districts and indeed regional districts, are decided by the province itself. And so, I think I know what you're referring to. There were cases in the past where annexation was proposed south of Duncan into the industrial area. That was, it didn't proceed, but, and I know other directors around the table have experienced this themselves, with annexations. I know a number in electoral area F over the last number of years, and a few other areas as well. The official plan itself doesn't really speak to this. It's really focused on doing planning within their current boundaries and trying to focus that planning in a more, the typical thing you will hear from a planner, more efficient way and walkable and all this kind of stuff. And so it doesn't really contain a lot of, or any significant content about, potential annexation proposals. I don't know if that helps. I hope so.
Okay. Director Wilson?
That was quick. Okay. That's an interesting thing, Mr. Tippett. I wonder if you, if I heard it right there, that I wasn't aware of this with a municipality can spontaneously annex an adjoining area. Just fill me in on that one, if you would, please.
Through the chair, yes, a good question. Sorry, I was probably a little bit curt when I explained that, or attempt to explain that.
Not at all. No.
Apologies, but anyway, the process is not, just a question of spontaneously grabbing some land, but they have to. Any municipality that already exists would have to apply to the province, which, as I said earlier, is the authority that essentially creates the municipal boundaries. It gives them the letters patent that describe their actual existence. When they receive a request like that for additional lands to be added to a municipality, they send out a referral to potentially affected other parties, and these can include improvement districts, such as fire departments, waterworks districts, certainly regional districts, and other agencies as well. So it's not like it happens in the absence of input. Certainly in the past where we, excuse me, where we've had annexation proposals. Sorry, I need a drink of water. There have been cases where we've responded quite strongly through the regional district board passing a resolution, you know, in one direction or another regarding a proposed annexation. So you needn't worry about you know, some sort of midnight land grab happening. There is a good process around it. I mean, it's good in the sense that it's in the open. The actual decisions are made by the province. So in that sense, you know, it doesn't empower this regional district to actually make the decision, but no local government's allowed to make such a decision. I think my use of the word spontaneous in the previous discussion was more around the idea of unincorporated areas deciding to become incorporated for the first time. So examples of that would be Lake Country and north of Kelowna and the Okanagan, you know, where there didn't used to be a municipality and they decide to become one as opposed to an existing municipality annexing it. So again, that's a provincial process too.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of structure around that as well.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. I wasn't aware of that kind of thing, but certainly there had to be some kind of thing. And my worry, of course, was that, you know, Mayor Sebring and North Cowichan massing on the borders of one of the electoral areas and taking over the next day. That's it, done. But no, thank you very much for that.
Thank you. So on my list, I have Directors Smith, Martman, and Morrison.
Thank you very much. Area G has been part of the Ladysmith expansion where they took all our industrial land at one point. Somebody gave it up nicely, I assume, in the past. So we have no industrial land, but that's okay. We're fine. One of the things that I see is the urban containment boundary for Chemainus. And as we butt up against Chemainus, that development in there may be of concern for Area G as time goes on, because what it does is it brings the flow of traffic. We have one road, the Chemainus Road, that connects us, and to me, that development will only increase the traffic on the road. Sometimes you can sit from one of the area Saltaire feeder roads onto Chemainus Road and watch 20 cars go by before you can actually step on the gas, swerve around the corner and get out there. So if you see more development happening in Chemainus, that's definitely a concern. And I'm hoping that they'll be addressing that in their master transportation plan. Even if they do the transportation up through River Road, that's not going to move the traffic. The majority of the residential homes are north of that connection there, and they're not going to go all the way up to River Road through the farmland to then go north to Nanaimo and work and things like that. It's going to flow through Saltaire. So I have a bit of a concern in there. And I'd like to maybe see a tiny bit more stronger language on trying to get active transportation going with the Cowichan Valley Trail through from Chemainus down to Duncan, and that there's an opportunity maybe to increase the strength of the language on active transportation there. So thank you.
Okay, Mr. Tippett.
Mr. Chair, thank you, and with apologies to the director for Saltaire, I don't know that you asked a question, but I thought I should say something anyway. The traffic thing is for real, and although I live in the town of Ladysmith, I'm at the far end of Chemainus Road, and I know exactly what she's talking about. Yes, the traffic is heavy. There are only two access points essentially, if you discount, you know, that sort of right in, right out, just north of Henry Road on the highway. I was going to just say, for the sake of those who maybe didn't know about this before, last time an official community plan was updated in Saltaire, there was a discussion in the steering committee for the OCP about a potential third access. Of course, that third access would have to be through the Porter's Dairy Farm area or somewhere around there, which carries other issues, and in the end, although the steering committee discussed it and went around and around, they decided not to take a formal position on that. But and I don't know that that's an answer. All I'm really saying is it's been a known issue for a long time, and as you say, as more people move into the area, including Saltaire, not that it's growing fast, traffic does become more of an issue. On the active transportation side, the timing of the transportation plan that North Cowichan is doing it's lagging a little bit behind their official community plan project, but it's coming up fairly soon. And also, I should say that our division, community planning, is working with Parks and Trails on the active transportation plan from our point of view. So we're going to be connecting there and trying to bring the issue that the director from Saltaire brought forward on her second point to that, to engage in a discussion around that. So I hope that helps the committee a bit with those points.
Thank you. Director Martman.
I'm going to try to do this with video because I need video. So this is the OCP from the municipality of North Cowichan, and this is what we have right now. At least, well, this is the October version of the MOCP. And I guess my question to staff is, when I read the two documents, I find the North Cowichan one fairly, the readability of it, not necessarily the content, but just being able to read it and sort through it is more, I don't know, I'm very much a layperson to this, easier for me to read. So I'm just curious about, where we are in are we headed that way? The inclusion of pictures, breaking out into pieces that are digestible, perhaps. I'm just curious how that will flow for us eventually.
Mr. Tippett.
I'd rather, Mr. Chair, have Coralie Breen answer the question because it's in her realm. If you please, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Breen.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair. The initial policy document that we presented to EASC in the July 7th meeting had a lot of diagrams in it. And we had to remove everything to put it into Google Doc, which is the document that we're going to go forward with for the next 6 months so that we can make changes easily, because it was in design and we could not easily edit that with all of the diagrams in it. So they will be put back in. It will be quite significantly enhanced. And we are now going through a process which we will through with further editing and formatting that will be presented to the directors in the second special ESC workshop. So diagrams will come in, but not probably for the next 4 or 5 months, but we'll separately append them for the purpose of community circles. And you will see a lot of changes in terms of formatting. Keep in mind that you're seeing an end product in the OCP with North Cowichan, and you're now seeing the very beginning of a draft with the MOCP for us in the electoral areas, but it will be significantly improved for readability.
Great, thank you. That's good to know.
And just a follow up, thank you, because I guess my first time through one, and also very much a layperson to this, and so it's really nice to know where our product or what the final product will start to look like and start to get a vision of it. The question, follow up question, if I may, is around some of their designations, for example, like water use designation that they have specifically focused on versus I think we use natural assets. Do you have any comments about what the differences in those types of titles of major sections?
Spring.
Thank you through the chair. And to the director, we and I should let the committee know that we are receiving submissions already from some of the electoral areas on comments on that, and who have actually done analysis between the two draft OCPs. And that is one of the comments that we've received. And we've used the term natural assets because we felt it was better fitting in terms of the electoral areas as opposed to the municipality. But you will see going forward more definitions with respect to water. That's similar to North Cowichan.
Okay.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing on this. Thanks for the clarity.
Great, thank you. So I'll go to Director Morrison and then Director Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I might have been one of those directors that raised some of these issues. I think we have to be cautious as to what our neighboring municipalities are doing, because the potential for annexation is, I think, a lot more real than some of us might think. I know that I've had at least 2 attempts to annex lands from Area F just right after an election. I believe a neighboring municipality has annexed one of the very few commercial retail properties in my assessment rolls, and just because they could, despite what, sort of protests we may make. And Mr. Tippett's analysis of there being there is a process. I wouldn't call it a good process. And just one example, and I don't think it's changed, is a referendum or a consent can be sought in the question of annexation. Problem is, they don't annex the area, or they don't seek consent from the area that's being annexed. They seek consent from the area that's doing the annexing. So, the question basically is, do you think it's a good idea to take this over and bring it into the municipal boundaries? Like, really? So, but my question is more specific around one of our local municipalities completed an OCP a couple of years ago. And what became clear is they had sufficient lands for future residential development. They had sufficient lands for future industrial development. So the OCP essentially said right in their document that they've got enough where they're at right now. And that pretty much put an end to them seeking annexation from neighboring electoral areas. Have we taken a look at the inventory that will result from this OCP in North Cowichan? And do we know whether or not there are any real shortages of a particular class of land, or whether it be industrial or whatever, that could indeed end up being the impetus for an annexation? And I know I'm putting you on the spot right now and don't expect an answer, but that's the kind of thing that I as a director worry about, as a municipality going shopping for some land in my electoral area that will suit their needs and take away from our tax base.
Mr. Tibbet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that's a really good question, Director Morrison. Thank you for that. I'll do my best to answer. First of all, I spoke at some length with the project manager of that file for North Cowichan, and what he told me is that under the regional population projection study that we went through recently, he felt that their existing land base, and specifically the policy that was proposed is proposed in this draft plan, was sufficient to take care of not only the sort of expected amount of growth, but possibly even more than that. So I think, through the planner at least, Chris, there, it was kind of that the answer was yes. So I mean, I would argue that if that is the case, then any annexation to permit additional growth would be extraneous to their need. But we're not facing that. I think the point that I just wanted to make is that within the boundaries of their existing municipality, they feel that they've got ample room to grow for the next 10 to 20 years without necessitating that. On the other land use category side of that ledger, he indicated that the council had been wrestling a bit with questions about accessory uses in industrial land. So they do have some industrial park land, industrial parks. I think there's some direction in this OCP to maybe open a little bit of related, but not necessarily light industrial use, in or adjacent to those parks that are in lands that ultimately right now are zoned industrial. And, I think what council was wrestling with was, is that going to diminish the de facto land base and require us to seek additional industrial lands? And I think council concluded that it isn't going to be a problem, but that was indicated as an interesting discussion around the council table. And so again, on that point, I don't think that there's a likelihood that they'll be seeking additional, or at least annexations for industrial land purposes either. And we didn't speak specifically about commercial, but I think that's kind of under control, so to speak, well within their boundaries. So I hope that helps you, Director Morrison, and the committee. But that's what I can say about it.
Great, thank you. So next up, Directors Nicholson, Kuhn, and Wilson. Director Nicholson.
We're still in the question period, are we?
Oh, go ahead. We can move to.
Well, I do I have two questions. One is a really specific question. I have to admit, I scanned the whole document. I didn't read in detail the whole document, so I may have missed something. But what has been a bone of contention for Area E has been the motorsport facility and the noise issue. And I am wondering from staff, is there a missed opportunity in this OCP to maybe address that kind of an issue and how to help it go away in the future?
Mr. Tibbet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's a really good question, and it's a tough one to answer. The official plan draft for North Cowichan doesn't specifically address sort of external issues like that. It does, however, speak to the need to enhance cooperation with adjacent jurisdictions, and obviously we're one of them. We're probably their biggest one in terms of area, and so I would be hopeful on that basis, and also through the experience of that facility, that in the future, should something similar come up, there might be a bit better dialogue, before this sort of thing happens elsewhere. Specific to that site, I can't really say that there's specific content that would speak to attempting to further mitigate existing impacts, although I know they've made some efforts to do that through operating or discussions and so forth with the owner. But I would say reasons for optimism, and in that sort of statement around the need to further cooperate, there's a reference to the work that we did sort of as a region before, on trying to, in a non-regional growth strategy manner, coordinate better than we have been in the past. And I think this OCP reiterates that. So it's a positive sign.
And Director Nicholson.
Thank you. That's a good segue to my second question, which was, it's sort of a preface to my comments on this whole OCP in general. But did the North Cowichan staff reach out to, before this referral, did they reach out to talk with our planning staff about how about issues, or collaborate at all in development of this OCP? Because a lot of the issues that they raise in it are cross-jurisdictional.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I specifically wasn't engaged in the earlier phases of this OCP development, so I can't, I can't say, at least from my point of view, no is the answer, but there may have been others who were contacted. I'm not aware of that, however. It's the kind of thing that if it did happen, it probably would have been fairly widely known. I guess the engagement sort of started or kicked off when we first got a notice from, I believe it was Rob Conway who sent it, about this draft OCP, and that they were going to send a formal referral. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So yeah, in short, we weren't invited, for example, to my knowledge, to participate in some sort of technical committee, for example. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thank
Thank you. So you can come back to me for my comments if you like, or I can launch into it.
Okay. I'll go to Directors Kuhn and Wilson and then come back.
All right.
And Director Smith. Director Kuhn, we can't hear you. I don't know if Director Kuhn can hear me. Okay, we'll
No,
go
I'm
while
fine.
we're waiting.
I'm
Are
fine.
you there? Okay. Okay, Director Wilson?
Yeah, this is Mr. Tippett has kind of opened up a Pandora's box here, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm really very concerned about this annexation thing. So more of a question than anything else. They can annex something, or they can come forward and annex something to us, but couldn't we do the same thing with them? Or is this only a one-way street? Okay, yeah, I can see Ian shaking his head there. So don't worry about that one, Mr. Tippett. But I would like some more information on this, so I'll contact you separately some other time if I can. This is kind of the mouse that roared, if you know about that story. But thank you.
Thank you. So go to Director Smith and then back to Nicholson.
Thank you very much. I noticed in their document regarding water, they referred to Holyoke Lake, and I assume that's in Area G's west.
Mr. Tippett?
I just was.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm sorry, I do not know the location of that lake. The ones I'm aware of are the ones just out my window here, which are, stalking and so on. Don't know that particular name.
Yeah, I just was wondering if it's in the area. I think it is in Area G west. And
Okay, we'll have to pursue that offline, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I do not support the recommendation that we have no objection to this official community plan. And the reason I say that is because, the official community plan is really important for providing a framework for development that's going to protect the environment, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and to make sure people have good livable communities. And that includes water. And from my perspective, when I read the document, and as I said, I didn't have time to do more than skim the whole thing, I think that they've packaged it in a beautiful way. They've got all the right words and all the trimmings, and it's nicely laid out, and I like their differentiation between what council can do versus what they need to do with partners and so forth. All that is great. But from my perspective, it is not at all addressing all the issues that they laid out. So they lay the issues out, but their actions are completely inadequate to address what's coming down the pipe in terms of climate change. So, our development, we have to do our development sensitively now so that we take advantage of all the ecological services that green spaces can provide in terms of flood mitigation, heat amelioration, drought management, and so forth. And from my perspective, a lot of these issues are cross-jurisdictional. And I know we don't have the technical underpinnings to actually do more than just have these general statements about what they would like to see done. If we're actually going to act in a meaningful way, there has to be the groundwork done. And nowhere in this document do they even acknowledge that the foundational work has not been done and list what needs to be required, what the work that should be required to get that done. So we often talk about a growth management strategy. I don't know if we need actual formal growth management strategy, but it blows my mind that you could actually come up with a growth strategy for the municipality of North Cowichan and not do it in a sort of a collaborative way with Duncan and the surrounding electoral areas, because however they develop is going to have a huge impact on the rest of us, particularly Duncan. And as far as I'm concerned, when I look at it, there has been incredible sprawl in the North Cowichan over the last few years, and now they're trying to control it. But they're controlling it by creating a lot more. They say in the document, for example, that they've tried to direct growth to Crofton and Chemainus, the existing village centers, and that hasn't worked so far. And now they're adding to that with Berkey's Corner as a village center and the hospital area, and so that's going to change. That's potentially going to change the region significantly, and it has a huge impact on the rest of us. It has a huge impact on water availability, how we're going to serve it, how that they're going to service it with the natural water availability. And it just seems to me that somehow we need to convey to them that there needs to be a regional effort to talk through some of these big issues and then get the technical work done in order to do that. Another good example is people are always talking about we need to have connectivity, ecological connectivity to protect biodiversity. We don't even have a sensitive ecosystem inventory, let alone sort of a biodiversity strategy that we can then take and overlay on the maps to see where we're at. So if we don't put those in as necessary ingredients to develop these policies into this document, then it certainly won't move forward. And they didn't have it last time, and they don't have it this time, and we're running out of time at this point. And I think it's very instructive for our official community plan. And certainly, I get we had COVID and everything slowed everything down on the couch in 2050, but I deeply regret that there hasn't been more staff collaboration on this. And I'm pretty sure our staff are going to be collaborating with all the other municipalities on our official community plan. But I think we need to send a clear message to North Cowichan that what they do affects all of us, and that we really need to build into this official community plan that they will work with us on getting some of these really key pieces of foundational information in place so that we can have some good, then we can look at the plans and see if they are any good. Right now, it's pretty darn hard to tell.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Director Nicholson. I don't know if staff has comments. Just to note, we don't have a recommendation yet. So Director Nicholson, it sounded like if you had an alternate with specific items you wanted them to look at, maybe you could come up with that. In the meantime, we'll hear from Mr. Tibbet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I believe that discussion is an interesting one, and I think it's probably one of the more eloquent arguments in favor of doing regional planning of some sort. Which, as you know, we don't do right now. If there had, regional growth strategies are kind of a mixed blessing. They're very rigid, technical, procedural things, but it does at least get some of these issues set out in high-level policy that has to apply throughout, throughout the region, and each of the partners within that region need to have statements within their own planning documents that explain how the document in typically an official community plan would assist in implementing that regional growth strategy. So in the absence of that, it's hard to invent something that replicates it, and certainly something that would have the gravitas of a regional growth strategy. We did make the open the discussion on this type of thing through the Cowichan 2050, and I think that was a very useful process. I guess to maybe take it further, it needs to we need to either reinvigorate that process or look at some other options. It's a really interesting discussion, and I actually agree with the analysis. It would be better to have greater cooperation.
Okay, interesting. Director Nicholson.
At the risk of boring everyone, I'd like to add one more point, which is the really significant need now to work closely with our First Nations neighbors, because they are mainly living in high risk floodplain situations, and there's going to be a need for people to be relocated at some point in the future. And so those discussions should be started now, or at least some sort of a way of working together and building a relationship so that those difficult discussions can happen in the future, and opportunities identified so that people will have a place to go to. That's been mentioned.
Okay, thank you. So seeing no further discussion, so staff does have a recommendation there that no one's moved. And Director Nicholson, I'm not sure if you had an alternative at this point.
I don't, but I can think about it for a minute more and come up with something, I think. Or maybe staff have an idea.
Okay, well, I see Director Morrison and Acton both have comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Director Nicholson has been quite eloquent in regards to her comments. I guess where I'm looking at this is that, and I would pose a question to Mr. Tippett or Ms. Breen, has North Cowichan produced a document, an official community plan that meets the needs of the legislation and what's required under that? And I'm also cognizant of the fact that we're sort of in overtime on their consultation period, and I believe the original deadline for new submissions was the 8th. I saw a date of the 21st that was floated. I don't know, and that would be the second question to staff is, do we know what the deadline for submission of additional information, if it isn't the resolution that's been recommended by staff?
Thank you, Mr. Tippett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to answer the second question first about timing. I understand that council directed the project manager to give additional time for the feedback period that we're in right now, and I understand it's sometime in January. So I'm sorry, I can't tell you the exact date. Maybe in the middle of January, something like that. So it's not quite as urgent as it might have looked like 2 weeks ago. Sorry, I've kind of lost my, what was part one of the question?
Is what we're considering here an OCP that is, it's not up to us to decide whether or not it meets the needs of the community that it's written for, but does it meet the needs of the requirements under legislation in regards to, is this a document that is ticking the boxes as far as legislative requirements?
Yes. Okay. So to try and answer that question, I believe it does. I mean, it's done under the same legislation that we operate under. It's dealt with all the issues that are required to be dealt with, projected growth and accommodating that, and matters that are largely internal to the operation and settlement and of the municipality. So yeah, there's not a problem there whatsoever. I think if there is a problem, it's not the OCP's problem. It's maybe a regional problem of wanting to enhance dialogue and maybe take things to another level. And again, I would agree with that. I think we do need to maybe have further discussion on some of these issues that transcend municipal boundaries. And but the document itself, there's not a problem with it at all, as far as I could tell. I saw nothing in my review that was a problem. It looked really good, actually.
Okay, thank you. Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the comments that Director Nicholson has brought forward, and I think they're very thoughtful, yes, to the region, but I think they somehow, if we could have those comments go back to North Cowichan, because regardless if they're regional or not, they should be in, well, there should be comment to those in the OCP as to how they're going to address those issues, because those issues it's a very large area that covers a lot of what Director Nicholson brought up. So could we not, I would not vote in favor of referring back that we are, I forget the wording, sorry, but accepting the OCP, yeah, an objection to the OCP, but so I'm not sure, is it worthwhile that we just say that we do not, and we have these concerns and list them?
Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe there is an option 2 in the recommendations here from staff.
Yeah, it's so that one, if everyone doesn't have it, but it just sort of leaves a blank. Insert comments. Okay, so we advise the municipality of North Cowichan, but it says insert comments, so we can do that if hopefully Director Nicholson.
So, I was just trying to think of how to, without slowing their process down, how to incorporate something into the actual plan that would hold them, that people could hold them accountable to moving forward with. And it's like, I think from my perspective, it would be something around the CVRD would like the official community plan to explicitly identify in consultation with CVRD key foundational technical work as specific priorities required to support the OCP. So that should be itemized in the plan. And I'm thinking specifically of a growth strategy for the region, biodiversity sensitive species strategy, a source water protection strategy. So some of those really key technical pieces that should be guiding from a broader perspective their official community plan and our official community plan. And there may be other key ones. I'm not an expert in all the areas. So.
Well, that would come up in the discussion, but so what your line, I don't know if Ms. Harrison got what was your actual wording?
How about it? Okay, so it would be so option 2, that it be recommended to the board that the CVRD advise the North Cowichan that the OCP, that we would like the OCP to explicitly identify in consultation with the CVRD the key foundational technical work required to support the OCP, and list those that work required as specific priorities in the OCP to be addressed. That's not, I'm sorry, I'm not very articulate today.
You were doing well until you tried to add too much at the end there.
I have to actually write this down, and I should type it in for Ms. Harrison.
Ms. Harrison, what did you get?
Exactly what Director Nicholson said. She also identified 3 key foundational technical areas. One was source water protection strategy. One was protection of sensitive areas, I believe.
Biodiversity and sensitive ecosystems, yeah. And growth strategy.
Thank you.
But
okay. Don't add any more.
Okay.
Point of
Okay,
clarification, Chair Simon. In the past, we have passed a recommendation that staff worked with the director on wording for a recommendation to go forward to another jurisdiction regarding a referral. Would the committee like to contemplate something like that instead of passing specific wording at this point in time?
Okay, see, Director Yanni DiNardo likes that one. I'm just not sure. Do we have time for that in this case with Mr. Tippett? The deadline was January.
Through Mr. Chair, just for clarification, the recommendation would be that the staff and the elected official work together for wording to go forward without coming back to the committee. It's just kind of like a work on the specific wording.
Okay. Sounds like Director Yanni DiNardo seconded that. Mr. Tippett, you wanted to?
Yeah, with your permission, Mr. Chair, I just had a technical clarification on Holyoke Lake, which was discussed earlier. Rashenda Woods looked it up for me, and it turns out it's at the very north end of electoral area F, right near the area G boundary. So not that this is really germane to the current discussion, but I thought I would bring that to you right now.
Thank you for that update. So let's just go back to Ms. Harrison. So could you please read that one more time, and so we're clear what we're going to be voting on?
If the committee so wishes, they could entertain a recommendation that staff and the area E director draft wording in regard to the North Cowichan referral to put forward to the board at their next regular meeting.
Okay. So, Director Yanni DiNardo, you seconded that. Still good with that. Director Nicholson, are you good with that? Okay. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll move on to our final item. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item R5 is the report from Community Planning Division regarding CVRD bylaw number 4331, Works and Servicing bylaw 2021. There is a recommendation and also a presentation from Planning and Engineering, I believe.
Perfect.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. And through the chair, unfortunately, Mr. Dennison was called away on family medical emergency just a few minutes ago. So he was going to speak to all the standard changes. And if the committee chooses, I can present the bylaw so that at least you'll have that presentation. He was going to present all of the information on standard changes. And then we can come back to a subsequent meeting if you'd like, so that he could answer specific questions with respect to engineering. So if the chair would like, I can proceed with the presentation and give his presentation portion as well.
Okay, so yeah, I'm undecided on whether we're better to wait until Mr. Dennison's there and we can go. I see a bit of nodding. Director Wilson, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It would be far better if we did this when when Mr. Dennison is here, because I do have some questions for him that he could specifically answer. So yeah, I would prefer if we could just perhaps delay this until he's available again.
Okay, so if there's no objection, do we need to formally refer this to the next ESC? Okay, Director Morrison's doing that.
So moved, and
Seconder.
there's just a big gap in between and Christmas and everything. I think we should do it. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. That's seconded, okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Great. So, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item would be unfinished business and then new business. And we did have a new business closed session item. And it too would have been led by Mr. Dennison. Did we want to refer this as well?
I think we should, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, moved, seconded, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And the last item would have been R2, again, led by Mr. Dennison. Refer to the next meeting.
Yeah, moved, second, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Good, okay.
And the next item would be question period. I have no applicants for question period. And then
Okay.
the last item would be the committee entertaining a motion to adjourn.
Moved, seconded, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Mohan.
Just wanted to say Merry Christmas.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Merry Christmas, everyone. Have a great Christmas break.
Yeah.